You need to think about that in terms of your own life rather than making specific predictions about what you're going to do next year, what you're going to do tomorrow, so on and so forth. You have rather projections than as you have direction. And the direction that the globe is going is not a happy direction. Just look at this one point. The estimate is the year 2030.